Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unlocking the absolute truth about soil microbes and looking at how you can completely transform your organic garden. Look, if you've ever struggled with hard, dead, unproductive soil, even after spending an absolute fortune on expensive fertilizers and fancy garden center treatments, well, This Explainer is going to change the way you look at your soil forever. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this with a number. 90%. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. 90% of the packaged, store-bought Trichoderma you buy at the garden center, it actually dies before it even touches the soil in your garden. That is just a staggering statistic, and to be honest, it's kind of the dirty little secret of the commercial agriculture industry.
Which brings us to the obvious question, right? Why on earth are you throwing your hard-earned money away on expensive microbes that just end up dying the second they face the harsh reality of your backyard? You're essentially paying for dead dust at that point.
So, here's our roadmap to fix this issue today. We're going to uncover the real truth about Trichoderma, explore the incredible power of indigenous microbes, and show you a zero-cost trick to make your own from waste. Then we'll talk about multiplying them at home, setting up some odorless composting, and finally, go over the crucial mulching techniques you need to keep them alive.
Let's start by looking at what goes wrong with store-bought Trichoderma. It really comes down to what you might call the rich kid syndrome. See, we've been conditioned to rely on these expensive industrial products that just do not work out in the real world. Lab-grown microbes are totally pampered. They're bred in sheltered, temperature-controlled, perfectly sterile environments. They've literally never had to fight a natural enemy in their entire lives. But on the flip side, indigenous microbes, the ones already living out there in your local soil, well, they're battle-hardened veterans. They survive harsh winters, blistering summers, floods, you name it. They already know your local soil's pH, and they know exactly how to fight the specific diseases in your area. They are true survivors.
So think about what happens when you buy those pampered lab-grown microbes. It's basically a massacre. Think about their journey. They get transported in baking hot trucks, stored under roasting tin roofs at the store. Then you take them home and toss them directly onto sun-baked, dry soil that might be sitting at, 38 degrees Celsius. Plus, that soil often has residual chemical toxins from old pesticides. And the worst part? They're completely starved because there's no organic mulch for them to feed on. They just go into shock and die almost instantly.
But don't worry, because there's a massive silver lining here. Let's talk about the sheer power of indigenous microbes.
The most powerful tools for your garden absolutely aren't sitting on a store shelf. They're already sleeping right under your feet. We call them IMO, which stands for Indigenous Microorganisms. This is a collection of beneficial native microbes that you can easily collect from local natural environments. Because they're native, they're perfectly adapted to your exact climate, and they fiercely defend their territory. This means they aggressively break down organic matter, they eliminate foul odors, and get this, they actually act as a highly effective natural biopesticide against local plant diseases. They are quite literally your garden's immune system.
And the science heavily backs this up. Research from places like the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources shows that capturing wild IMO from the roots of bamboo or broadleaf trees is a total cornerstone of successful natural farming. It turns out the natural sugars in bamboo roots attract the absolute strongest, most powerful bacterial-dominated microbes.
So, how do we actually get our hands on them without spending a dime? Let's look at a totally free method to wake these guys up. Farmers often call this the zero VND trick, meaning it costs you absolutely nothing. We're going to use everyday kitchen waste to wake up those sleeping microbes. Here is your magical 24-hour recipe. First, when you make rice, save that thick rice wash water instead of pouring it down the drain. It's packed with carbs and vitamin B. Second, stir in a spoonful of sugar or some cheap molasses to act as an energy spark. Third, go outside and grab a handful of rich, humus soil from under a bamboo plant or a big, shady old tree. Mix it all up in a bucket and just cover it loosely. In exactly 24 hours, it'll develop this light, sweet, sour smell, kind of like wine or yogurt. Boom! You've just awakened billions of native spores into a biological workforce for your garden. Now, if you want to scale this up and produce massive amounts of IMO biomass, there's a traditional multi-stage method. You start with IMO 1 by burying cooked rice in a wooden box under a tree to capture that white mold. Then you turn that into IMO 2 by mixing it with molasses. Finally, you create IMO 3 and 4 by mixing that extract with water, rice bran, and more molasses to mass multiply those microbes. It's an incredibly powerful process if you're working with a larger farm or garden.
But what if you just want a simple way to multiply your microbes at home to increase their survival rate and save money? Let's break that down. Whether you're buying a small pack of high-quality commercial trichoderma or you're using the IMO you just made, you don't have to keep starting from scratch. You can take a tiny amount and multiply it massively. To do this cost-effectively, here is the exact ratio you need. Just 1 kilogram of your trichoderma or IMO base, 3 kilograms of sugar or molasses, and 100 liters of clean water. That tiny little initial investment scales all the way up to a 100-liter army of beneficial microbes.
Now, there are a few absolute rules you have to follow here so you don't accidentally kill off your new army. First, you absolutely must use clean water. If you're using tap water, let it sit out in an open bucket for a day or two so the chlorine fully evaporates, because chlorine will kill those microbes instantly. Stir the mixture really well to get oxygen in there, and only cover it loosely. These are aerobic microbes, meaning they need to breathe. Keep the barrel in a cool, shaded spot for about 5 to 7 days. You'll know you nailed it when it has a light, sour, wine-like smell. If it smells like rotting garbage, well, something went wrong and you'll need to start over.
All right, so you've got this massive supply of liquid microbes. Now, let's talk about turning your daily kitchen waste into pure garden gold.
Composting kitchen waste often scares people off because of the smell, right? But these microbes completely solve that problem. Here's how you do it odorlessly. Chop up your organic kitchen waste, just make sure to avoid oils and meats, layer it about 4 to 5 centimeters thick in a compost bin. Keep the moisture at roughly 45 to 50%. And here is the magic step. Sprinkle your multiplied trichoderma or IMO over the layers and add a splash of molasses. The microbes aggressively break down the waste, and the molasses fuels them, which completely eliminates any bad odors. Cover the whole thing tightly, and in 15 to 20 days, you've got incredibly rich zero-odor fertilizer.
Okay, we've arrived at the most critical part of this entire process. How do we keep these guys alive once they're in the garden?
Listen closely, because all the microbes you've cultured, multiplied, and composted are completely useless if you apply them incorrectly. UV rays are literally the scythe of death for microbes. Never, ever apply your microbial mixture to bare soil in the middle of the day. If you do, that midday sun is going to instantly cook and kill the billions of life forms you just spent all week cultivating.
To ensure they actually survive and thrive, you have to follow the golden rules of mulching. First, only apply your microbes in the late afternoon or right after a good rainstorm, when the soil's pores are wide open. And second, this is non-negotiable. You must always cover your soil with a thick layer of organic mulch. We're talking 5 to 10 centimeters deep. You can use dry leaves, cut grass, or honestly, you can even throw raw kitchen waste directly on the surface as mulch. This thick layer acts as a survival blanket. It cools the soil down, blocks those deadly UV rays, and traps moisture. Plus, it gives your microbes a literal endless, rotting buffet of food to consume and turn into plant nutrients.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. The soil is a giant, breathing entity. We don't need to force it with chemicals. We just need to provide the right key to unlock its natural power. I mean, that hits the nail on the head, right? You are partnering with nature here. You aren't fighting a war against it.
And if you follow this system, cultivating your native microbes, protecting them from the sun, and feeding them with a nice thick layer of mulch, the reward is just breathtaking. Within a single month, you'll be able to dig your hands into the earth and find that your hard, dead clay has totally transformed. It becomes soft, porous, absolutely packed with earthworms and healthy white plant roots. It literally feels exactly like a freshly baked sponge cake.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Are you ready to stop throwing your money away on dead, pampered commercial microbes? Tonight, when you make dinner, save that rice wash water. Go out to your garden, grab a handful of soil, and start waking up the wild army that's already sleeping in your own backyard. Get out there and start experimenting. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.